everything I bring up, we all will have an input on it. Is that if we're going to spend the money and we're gonna develop a new facility, we develop one that we're not gonna have to worry about ever doing again in our lifetime, and that will bring revenue to Camden County as a whole. New courthouse, the commissioner building, all that has made it to where it would not be a viable option as far as I see, that we move the complex any distance from the city of Woodbine. Talk about WebEx and things like that. There are at least 3 times in the past 2 weeks that, and it may be more, but I'm just gonna hedge my bet. In the past 2 weeks, that we have tried to do WebEx, and for one location or the other, the IT didn't work, and we end up having to take the inmates to the courthouse. So to transport them any distance would not be a viable option for us. And there are times that the judge either wants or the inmate is required to stand in front of the court during his process. And there are times that a judge will say, okay, I want to see John Doe. John Doe is any distance away from here. By the time put in travel, calling down, getting John Doe processed out, getting a vehicle to put him in, now we're talking about 45 minutes to an hour before John Doe is standing in front of that judge. And if I'm John Doe, I don't want to be standing in front of an impatient judge 45 minutes to an hour later while he's deciding what happens to the rest of my life. So I think the number one thing that we do, and I want to accomplish something. I don't want to just get together and go, okay, because I like you guys, so it's always a pleasure to see you. But I don't want this just to be a social visit. If we're going to get together and have this committee, then I want to get something done while we're doing it. Obviously, the first order of business would be to find a location. And then to decide what we want to put on that location. And if I'm spending the county's money, I want to spend something that's going to be important for the county, take care of their needs, and I would like to spend the money that will bring revenue back to the county. We build a big enough complex that, number one, we will have extra rooms, because like Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. If we have the beds, we're gonna have the arrest, because growth is just gonna happen. But until we fill it up with our inmates, we can fill it up with other inmates from other counties. An easy option is Charlton County right now. They have, on any given day, at least 2 deputies on the road transporting inmates throughout the state of Georgia, because they have no place to put them. So obviously, we could put them right here. If you have it big enough, the transport teams that run up and down 95 will bring them there so their officers can get a nap, go to bed for overnight, and then get up and drive some more. Right now, when they do that, I charge them $95 a day. Obviously, if we had a better bedroom, I would probably charge them more. They don't blink at 95. So every time they stop hemming and hawing, when I charge them a certain amount of money, I just raise it. And if we could build a good enough complex, we could hold police academies here, jailer schools here, things like that, and other agencies would send their people here to go to the academies, and that means that Woodbine, Kingsland, St. Mary's, everybody will get a piece of the pie, because everybody that comes here is going to have, all those recruits or trainees are gonna wanna go out in the community. They're gonna wanna have dinner. They're gonna wanna have a cocktail. They're gonna wanna, go to the store, all those things, and that will spread out throughout the whole county. So we will all benefit if we build it big enough, build it diverse enough that we can handle all that. So I guess the first question is everybody agreeable with the fact that we keep this thing close to Woodbine?
Let's pause for a minute. Let's do introductions first. Then we'll go back to that.
All right, go ahead and start.
I'm Ben Casey, Chairman of Camden County Commission.
Trevor Reddick, Board of Commissioners.
I'm Lee Spell. I'm the city manager in Kingsville.
Sean Boatwright, County Administrator for Camden County.
Rick Evans, Chief of Kingsville Police Department.
Jason Stewart, Deputy Chief.
Robbie Horton, City Manager for St. Mary's.
Kevin Wilson,
Jimmy Cone, Public Works Director, City.
Samantha Young, City Administrator for the City of Woodbine.
Kizzy Knight, Mayor Woodbine.
Karen Janney, Camden County Sheriff's Office.
Barbara Rudolph King, a very interesting citizen of Camden County.
Thank you. As far as the location, I know at one time the county was looking at property at Harriet's Bluff. That property is no longer on the table.
All right, but I guess we go back to the original question. Is everybody agreeable that this needs to stay close to the courthouse? That being said, there is a piece of property that prior to any of the present commissioners being on the board has been addressed for over a decade as something that would be a viable option. That piece of property is on Highway 17. Just-
Hold. Probably don't want to get too detailed on where that location is yet,
Okay,
because you don't want property speculators buying it out from under us or anything like that.
okay, well,
I would hesitate on making the location, any location public yet.
all right,
I would like to see, I mean, before we do the location we need to figure out the size of the complex, because the size of the complex will probably determine the size of the property.
all right.
That's just my thinking.
Well, one of the things I looked at as far as the size of the complex was to have a facility that's big enough for growth, big enough for expansion, and would handle everything if we want to build a complex, that would entail. That would, in my mind, envision something the size of what Glenn County has. They have a 600-bed facility, but if we don't want to go that big, the other part of that footprint could be the 911 center, storage, record storage, which is always an issue. I also have envisioned that the auditorium at the high school be included in the footprint so that you could have training classes, academy classes, graduation, things like that there. We obviously need to have a training center in addition to classrooms. So I think that the training center we presently have at Station 11, that size would suffice for that to be done. We want to have a physical fitness complex in there that will handle the training, hand-to-hand combat, other physical activities that are involved in training. And so I have visioned a track being the size of that building, and actually the track being on the second floor. We're gonna have to have a 911 center. We want to have that a two-story building where the actual 911 center is on the second floor, should somehow the worst case scenario ever hit, we don't have to worry about dispatchers underwater. So I think that we could we want to have a maintenance facility so that we can take care of law enforcement vehicles on site. Everything will be on that piece of property. That would mean, substation would then be available for the county to do whatever it wants to do with it. The present training facility, which is at Station 11, would be then become something that the county could use for whatever they want to do with it, because all that would be on this site. Law enforcement complex would encompass everything, including training, maintenance, physical fitness, all of it. And if we choose to go that level, it will also be able to do the academies and things that other counties can come to us, give us money. Also, it would allow us to rent out rooms until such time as we don't have any, and I don't see that anytime. If we build it big enough, I don't see that where it's going to be an issue for us to fill with our inmates, but we can fill it with other people's inmates, so they can help pay for it.
What is our present capacity on the jail itself now?
That's a twofold question. The present capacity is 149. But an additional squad bay facility is there. It has been built, which would provide for 50 more beds. Obviously, it'd be a low inmate threshold because the building is just 10. So you wouldn't want to put your maximum inmates in there, but you could put your misdemeanors in there. We don't, as I'm sure every law enforcement individual is aware of, if not everybody who's hiring, finding people to work is few and far between. So we don't have enough people. We've been given the okay to hire the people, but we don't have enough people actually to staff what we presently have. That would require, to open that building up, would require an additional 10 people. So right now, best case scenario, we would have 199. Now, that's never going to actually happen because when you classify people, one person can't be with another, co-conspirators can't be in the same location. Some people, they want personal, or they need to be isolated, or they're being disciplined, or they feel like they're fear of their lives in there, so they need to have individual rooms. There are very few single bed rooms in what we have. So if somebody needs protective custody, they're actually taking up 2 beds.
So we're talking about basically doubling the size of capacity wise of what we currently have. As far as the inmates go.
Well, actually, if we did comparable with what Glenn County has, you would triple. They have a 600-bed facility.
So, I mean, it could be designed in the way where we could phase the jail, to start out with like 300 beds and then go to 400 or 450 and then 600. I mean, would that work for our needs right now?
With the layout that Glenn County has, you can expand on it.
Okay.
So let's say you wanted to put a 300-bed facility there, you could then add another wing,
Okay.
right? As long as you have the room for expansion.
Sure. Yeah.
And obviously, should we look at the property, we should consider that when we look at it.
Oh, yeah.
So looking at facility, facility have, you have to transport out.
Yes,
When you transport to a doctor, transport to a hospital for medical stay and stuff, it gets expensive. So that's the other thing. as far as your medical
Correct.
facility,
Facility
more up to
size
date and stuff you can get
of
in.
Glenn County would give us that. It also, several of us went and toured it. Also, would have a dentist office in it. We're not putting in implants. Presently, if you have a bad tooth, we'll do one of two things. Give you some ibuprofen to ease the pain, or we're gonna pull it, whichever one you want. That's fine with state law. Extraction is all you have to have, but you should have a room dedicated to that. And this time, we have a contract with Dr. Baird. We take them to him. But once again, when you're moving inmates, there's a lot of sensitive natures. Not to mention the fact that you got an inmate outside of the jail. So should he be of a classification level that he's dangerous to the community, he may also be of a classification level that he has the ability to organize an escape. And if he knows he's going to the dentist, we don't give them the exact time, but it's going to get out. Normally, we will go see Dr. Baird at the end of the day because normal citizenry does not want to be sitting in the waiting room and have somebody shuffle in there in shackles. It's a bad visual. It makes them upset and it makes them worried about their children that they have sitting next to them. So we go at the end of the day.
It'd be better to bring the dentist or the doctor.
Right. He got a chair to do it there. Glenn County's got a small room, big enough for a dentist chair and, you know, some cabinets for him to have his instruments. If you need to pull one, the dentist comes there and he takes care of it.
So to put all that into perspective, I would say we're looking, you know, at least 30, 40, 50 acres worth of property. Would that be of usable
Of
property?
upland property.
Yes.
If we get into a piece of property that has wetlands on it, then we're gonna get into the mitigation aspect of it, or it would just not be usable at all.
Well, for a 600 bed jail, we need to justify the need for that. See us needing a 600 bed jail.
Not today, but I mean, I think it's smart to plan for 30 years from now. And
Having
we
the
do,
property and
yeah,
laying it out where you can expand, I
Right.
have no problem with that.
And
Yeah.
you can do that with the Glenn County concept because they have halls going to the next section of cell blocks.
right.
If you want to build a 300-400 bed facility now, and then you want to expand it later, you put another hall that goes to a section of cell blocks, and that will give you more beds.
Five to 2. So that's the other thing. Property is condensed in, then you can go up and just, first floor will stand second floor. Can make a multi-level out of this one.
Needs to be remembered when we do this, if that is going to be an option in the future, that we don't make any shortcuts. Facility we're at now was originally designed that you could go up. But the shortcuts were made in the construction that if you go up, it will come down. Room for that here. Put it together, we need to put it together right. Do it right the first time, and it makes it so much better from then on.
Master Chairman, I know the commissioner said that he didn't want to discuss, where the property is at this point. But between your group, have you actually looked at some property that you think will be available and permissible to put a jail like this? You don't have to tell me where it is.
I have.
Okay.
Fits the footprint of everything we've talked about.
It's near Woodbine.
Yes, it is.
We, changed from the jail next to the courthouse and moved out to the sheriff's office. It changed the whole dynamics of transport. So that's the other thing the sheriff's office done. So we transported 2 miles. Says to where the sheriff's office is now is 2 miles. All done now, so you transport it, changes personnel. When you get to traveling 2 miles, if that's what you're looking at.
And you got a good point there in that according to state law, moving an inmate requires a certified peace officer. Courthouse here and Woodbine proper can be stretched into the concept of on campus. That being said, you would not necessarily have to have a certified peace officer to put somebody in a van and bring him to the courthouse as long as the facility is closed. If you move it far away, you would then have to, by law, have a certified deputy or police officer, but I don't think that Kingston or St. Mary's have anybody that they're not using, that we could just use as a transport officer to come up and move that inmate. So that is another reason we need to stay close.
So who moves the inmates now? I mean,
We have,
no, you do handle it, but
yes, we handle it.
they're not certified.
Well, no, in most cases, we're lucky enough to have at least one certified officer on every shift. So normally we do it that way. But if it becomes the benefit to the inmate that we get them here, then we can move them with a jailer because a certified jailer, because it is within the campus concept.
So we talked about the where and the what. I guess we need to talk about the when and the how, you know, in the funding.
Talk about the why.
The why?
Yeah.
Um,
Why are we putting money into a jail instead of
We're gonna do that also, but this is just a discussion between us. We're not taking any input from the public right now. We need to justify the need of expanding the jail. I know this facility over here is outdated and all that. We need to not only to discuss, figure out the location and the money, of course, we need to justify the need to the public. I don't think that, like I said, the public's not gonna go for us to have a 600-bed jail. But now we need to lay it out to where we can expand in the future. Because this county is not gonna stop growing.
correct.
So we need to lay it out to where we can expand in the future.
And we can do that. And but one of the initial or easiest reason to justify why we need to move or have another facility is this facility was opened in 1987. It's falling down around our ears, and it has been. So we are spending a considerable amount of money to keep it even within federal regulations, that a federal judge does not come in here and shut it down and send all our inmates somewhere else at county expense, and then make us build one to their specifications, which is a lot stricter and more costly than if we build one. For an example, obviously cast iron pipes and woodbine clay do not go well together. We are constantly having to dig up the floors and replace the pipes, with PVC or CPVC or whatever it is. It's not rot. The most recent one we did would have cost us above $60,000, but obviously we used inmate labor. Now, when it came to actually laying the pipe back, well, then we had to bring in, I believe Deacle was the one that got the bid to come in and do it so that it is done properly and to specifications. But busting up the concrete, digging out the pipes, filling it back in, pouring the concrete, all that the inmates did, and it was estimated that that project there, which did not cover the whole jail, just covered what the issue was at the time, $60,000. Doors that do or do not work, either don't shut, or if it does shut, got to put your feet on the wall to open it back up. Those are safety issues for both sides, for inmates and or jailers. You can't secure inmates, or if an inmate is then secure, you can't get to him should there be some kind of a medical issue involved. I don't want to answer the question why we couldn't get to so-and-so while they were having a heart attack because we couldn't open the door. And it's not that we didn't know. We know that that issue is there. So now we are attempting to address that. And that is a process, a bid out process, et cetera, getting the purchase orders and all that. We are doing that because people aren't going to come for free to look at it and tell us what we need to do. So we've identified it. So that insulates us a little bit, but we can't just identify the issues forever and expect that to insulate us should something occur that is going to have to be answered. We have a dishwasher, or the only dishwasher that we have is down. It's too old, it's gone, it's dead. So now we're having to wash them by hand and then soak them in antiseptic to make sure, or antibacterial to make sure that nothing, or we've done everything we can do, that nothing can harm an inmate as far as food poisoning is concerned. That still does not equate to the level of temperature that they are washed in if you put them through a dishwasher. We've identified that. We're in the process of buying a new one. But we're always having to go back and fix. We're always having to dig up some part of the jail and fix the pipes. Parts of the jail that we can't, a maintenance man can't work in. So you're having to tear down walls to get to it. It's just not a viable facility as far as cost is concerned to continue the way it is. And as far as growth is concerned, we don't have all our inmates here because we don't have the ability to classify them like they should be and separate them. So we have to send some out now. Some of our inmates are in Glenn County. So we're doing exactly what I think an expansion will do for us. We're paying another county to house our inmates because we can't put them in the same facility. Even though we've got bed space, they can't go, this one can't go in that block with that one because they are co-conspirators, or they're on the street antagonists, so they're gonna fight. They fight. We got a medical issue. An inmate is the only individual in the state of Georgia that is required to have medical attention. I would rather spend a little bit to have him somewhere else than spend everything that I'm gonna have to do to send him to the hospital and get repaired. These are issues that we could mitigate if we had a bigger facility. It obviously would not require the maintenance that it requires, and we could separate and keep our own inmates as well as hopefully get income from other counties who are in the same boat we're in now.
Well, I'd like to see, exactly what we need and not necessarily what you want. Saying,
Correct.
because we got to look out for the taxpayer, because this is going to be a very expensive project. So we need to do what we need, plus also be able to expand in the future. And that's what I would like to see.
And I agree with that, and it could be done. Now the question is, when you're doing this and it's what we need with the opportunity to expand, which should certainly be considered, is what we need just what we have now, take care of what we have now, or is what we need something that could bring money to the county? Not only housing inmates, but the influx of income that all the county, St. Mary's, Kingsland, Woodbine, everybody would get if we have trainees coming here. So are we looking for something, a complex that would also be able to house, to have a mandate school or a jailer school? So that we're not sending them someplace else and spending our money, but instead they're coming to us spending their money.
You know, the people you were talking about charging, who specifically was that?
Who what?
The people you were charging $95 a night?
Oh, that's transport.
Okay, just people running up and down the interstate,
Interstate.
need a place to stay. Sean, you mentioned, which was the first time yesterday I'd heard of that, was it state or federal prisoners? We only get reimbursed $15 a night?
Yes, for state inmates. I think it's
Okay.
$15 is what the state reimburses us.
That's after we have an inmate, he goes to court, he gets convicted. Then all the people involved put together paperwork. They send it to the state saying John Doe was convicted to 2 years in prison. Once the state accepts that, and all the i's are dotted and t's are crossed, then they will say, okay, he is our inmate. They then have 15 days to pick him up before the cost goes to them. Very rarely do they take longer than 15 days. If they do, then this kicks in, but that in no way compensates compared to the cost of having them.
Sure, yeah.
If you have federal inmates, they tend to pay better, but you have more stringent guidelines. That's something we can't meet, but
Yep.
at this point, since we don't have the space, it's not something that we even entertain.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so you talk about a lot of the issues you're having today. I think it's important to kind of look at, you know, building a complex like this is going to take, you know, 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, it's going to take a long time. There's a lot of planning to do up front. So, you know, the issues you're having today could be magnified, you know, twice as bad, you know, 5 years from now. So, I mean,
Either way.
yeah, I mean, there's going to be a time period where we have to do something to just kind of get us by where we are until we can get into a new facility. But I wonder, I mean, with that expansion in the back, I know funding was approved, you know, this past fiscal year. What could we do to improve recruitment so that we can at least, you know, temporarily resolve some of our overcrowding issues and not having to house prisoners in Glenn County?
Recruitment would address our staffing level. Obviously, the county has begun to do that. Once again, it's all about finances. If I can go to Buc-ee's and I can get $23 an hour and not have to worry about anything, much less getting in a fight or all the other legal ramifications,
Sure.
why do I want to go to work for $17 an hour in a jail? So, to get people to come that even fit our requirements. You know, I can have a felony conviction, can work at Buc-ee's. You
Yep.
can't be in law enforcement with a felony conviction.
Right.
So individuals that we can even address to come to us,
Yep.
we have to make it palatable for them to show up.
Sure, yeah. You know, and I don't think it's something that should necessarily stop us from, you know, building a new public safety complex. But what I wouldn't want to do is spend all this money to build a new facility and, you know, y'all aren't able to staff it. If that makes sense. Like, we want to be able to, you know, staff what we've got available now just to kind of get us by, but then build a new facility and be able to, you know, not have any,
Yeah, I think the financial, the pay issue
right?
is being addressed, and we hope that, what is about to occur will make that considerable difference.
Okay, good.
Well, hopefully in the design of the facility, hopefully you can design it or find a design that would potentially take less people.
As long as all the parts are working correctly, that does happen. This is something that we have here that does not work. We've rewired it at our expense with the use of inmates several times. But we always find water in the pipes. So if the design is not conducive to it working, but if it did, it would make things easier and it would take less. But there is going to be a level to where you're gonna have to have ratio between the number of inmates and the number of officers.
Right.
And that's gonna have to be there no matter how automated it is.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I would say if you have any doubts about whether or not, we have a need for this type of facility, I would just, urge you to take a tour of the place. I mean, no discredit to what y'all do. I think y'all done the best you can with what you have to work with, but it's in pretty bad disrepair, and it's becoming more of a liability at this point and almost costing more money to maintain than it would be if we just had a new one we were able to operate.
We have issues on a weekly basis that we are having to address. And if they weren't addressed and repaired, they would be at the level that a federal judge would shut us down. And I don't want our inmates to live in that kind of environment. It's just, they've been arrested, they haven't been convicted. But no matter what, they're still a human being, so we have to treat them as such. And to go, well, if you didn't like the fact that the pipes are backing up and sewage is coming in your cell block, then you shouldn't have been arrested. You shouldn't have done the crime or whatever. We're not at that point in society anymore. Penal institutions are gone, and rightfully so.
And I look at it as them being human beings. Just look around the table. We all are free today, but who is it to say we're gonna be free tomorrow? Anything can happen. Would you wanna live in that kind of condition? Would you wanna be in that kind of condition?
No,
So you're looking at you're in the present, but you're looking at the future.
I'm not planning on building one of those rooms for me.
Me either, but who knows?
Well, I think we're all probably pretty much in agreement that it needs to be somewhere near Woodbine. I don't have a problem with that.
Makes sense. I mean, but y'all are in it more in the day-to-day, so.
We're not in agreement. So we look in the Woodbine area. So, when do you want to get together and discuss what the search has brought up as far as a location in the Woodbine area? Because that discussion would obviously be, at that point, showing the property that we're trying to narrow it down to and making sure that it has the size and capabilities to handle initial and expansion.
So, I mean, with all that, looking at development of property, there's a lot of due diligence, like you mentioned, and I know some of it's kind of been going on behind the scenes, but to really get in there and do the full amount of due diligence that we would need to make sure it's a viable site, would it make sense to try to, get some type of formal agreement to where, I guess, y'all's point, nobody could come in under us and try to buy it out while we're in our due diligence phase?
Well, we could obviously, if we find something
Right.
that has that, we're obviously gonna make due diligence part of the concept. We like this property. basically put a hold on it, until such time as we get a decision from the committee and the citizens that this is the place we need to be. And if it works, we will continue on with the negotiations. If it doesn't work, then we're gonna look elsewhere.
I'd like to see, a design or a layout of the facility, and then we could take that and match it to whatever property we need.
Well, if you wanna start looking in Woodbine, I'll give you both the next time we get together.
One of the things I think we haven't really touched on, we've kind of mentioned it, but obviously the cost of the facility is a big one. But, I think in consideration of the property and the design, we really need to kind of look at what the current costs are for building a jail facility as they stand now in the state. And right now, it's considerable per bed.
You
And I
anticipate it going down?
Not anytime soon. So, I mean, and I say that just to say, I think, before we get too far down the road of entering into an agreement with a property owner or anything like that, I think this group, with the cities combined here, need to figure out a funding method for this facility, because right now we don't have one. And I mean, if we were to even consider a 300-bed facility right now, based off current rates, you're looking at a minimum of $51 million, and that's just design and construction. That's not property
That's not
acquisition.
property.
So that's 51 million,
Yeah,
and that's not operating, that's just
that's just
construction.
capital improvements. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, and that's 300 beds, so, and that's not considering all the other features that you mentioned earlier. That's just the jail and
That's
some
just
office
the
space.
jail.
Jail, office space.
So would 300 beds be enough for a phase one for y'all? I mean, if y'all are at like 150-ish now
Yeah,
and overcrowding and sending.
300 beds now
Now, yeah.
would handle what we have and bring back what we have outsourced.
Okay.
And save us and when I say us, save the county, and the citizens, the taxpayers, a bunch of money in the fact that they're not repairing something that's going to continue to deteriorate.
Sure.
Well, the design of it needs to be in such that it would be easier to maintain.
Exactly.
And operate.
Part of the design of the Glenn County Jail is that they have chaseways to everything. So if I'm a maintenance man and I need to work on something in a particular cell, as far as the plumbing or whatever is concerned, electricity, first off, I don't have to go in the cell block with my tools, which to us are tools, to them are weapons, right? And I don't have to lock everybody down in that cell block, which requires officers to do. I can go and address that particular cell through the chaseways, and nobody ever sees me. They'll hear me, but nobody ever sees me or comes in contact. We don't have that here.
Right. Well, the funding part is gonna be the big question. We've talked about using SPOS, I think it would be SPOS 9 funds, partially for this. The rest of it, we'll have to go out and get bonds.
And if we do bonds, I mean, if you split that 51 or even just 50 million in half, I mean, last time we looked at rates, just to do $25 million bond over the course of 20 years would be close to $36 million in total. You'd have about 11 million in interest. So the total project cost could be as high as 67.
I have not looked. Do you know if there's any grants available for something like this?
I haven't heard of any grants from Department of Justice or anything like that. I mean, I haven't
So
seen
we
it.
should examine that aspect too.
I know, and there's two other jails that are being constructed now in Georgia that I'm aware of. One's in Jeff Davis. That one's a $10.5 million facility, 75 beds. I think their property, they probably already owned it, I think. So I don't think they really had any property acquisition. Another one in Walton County, that's an 850 bed facility. That's 145 million. So I think these are significant costs. Each one of those comes out to, you know, roughly between $140,000 to $170,000 per bed. $140,000 figure, that's without design. You include design, your soft cost contingency. So, I mean, you're closer to the 170,000 per bed, which is where you come up with the 51 million. If you do a 300 bed facility. Now, I think with the cities being here, I mean, obviously you all have citizens and tourists and passerbys that you may have to arrest and bring to the jail facility. So I think that's part of the reason why we may need to consider partially funding this through SPOS 9.
But there's no guarantee that Splash 9 will pass.
And that's the other issue.
So I guess it would fall as a tier 1 project on SPOS.
It would.
That, yeah.
That cuts that 25. I mean, and that's just a speculative number at this point. I mean, that's not to say that's where it's going to stay. And again, this is all subjective on SPOS 9 passing, but that would be, that 25 would come off the top, and then that would reduce every jurisdiction's remaining portion that we would receive thereafter. So
Right now, the county has no long-term debt. If we go through this project, we will have long-term debt.
and again, that's just at a 20-year bond. I mean, you could do a 30, but you're increasing your interest payments
Yeah, right.
significantly.
Yep.
I think at a minimum, if you did the 20-year, at a minimum, you're probably about 67 million into this project, and that's without property acquisition. And that's just the jail and some office space, you know, enough for all the staff and future staff.
Yeah.
Anything above beyond that, we'd have to calculate in some additional costs.
So you've obviously looked at the Glenn County design. Have you looked at any others?
Looks at Nassau. That's a upward facility instead of spread out. Upward expansion is obviously an option if space becomes an issue, but then also upward expansion require a lot of disturbance with the present population. If you choose, you know, that we build it and then we need to expand up, got construction going on in and around present inmates. So the safety issue and the security issue become a question. So if all you have to do is build a new corridor to the next set of cell blocks, that's a lot safer as far as security and safety to inmates, officers. You know, screwdriver being a weapon doesn't mean it's just a weapon against an officer. It can be a weapon against another inmate.
I'm not too much in favor of going up. We've got enough room in this county that we can build a ground level complex.
Yeah, I think it would be easier to maintain a 1-level facility, just thinking about it. So,
Yeah, because if you're going up,
Yeah.
you gotta figure, if you gotta work up, how you gonna get up?
And you gotta
You
think
got-
of,
I mean, you got Jacksonville, they got 7, 8 stories. I don't know what happens if the elevator goes down.
while there's a fire.
I'm not wanting to walk inmates up and down 7, 8 flights of stairs.
Well, I think we need to kind of establish on a design, work on the location. But that's just my opinion.
Okay, we can do both.
If we're tying this to SPOS 9, I mean, just even the financial component of it, I mean, we're potentially 3 years from that. So
Yeah.
minimum 2, but really 3. as far as collections start coming in, and that's just, I mean, I'm glad we're meeting very early on this. I think it's good, and I realize that the longer we wait, the more money we have to throw into the current facility. But I think we may have to do that regardless,
We gotta keep maintaining it
right?
until we get a new facility built and get the people transferred. Then we gotta figure out what to do with those.
Yeah, I think if we can have the design and everything prepped and ready to go alongside the SPOS 9 referendum, from there, it's just a matter of getting the bond passed and then bidding and starting construction. I would recommend, though, that with this project, we hire a true project manager, contractor that serves as our GM, basically.
Now, prior to the meeting, just yesterday, I heard that there is a organization that will come in and will address everything that you need to deal with, that you never even thought that you would have to deal with, probably as a project manager, but they will come and have an initial conversation at no cost.
Sure.
Obviously, they're then going to try and sell their product or their services. But as I'm looking at this, I'm going to have a conversation with them so I can give you as much information as possible when we come back together.
Yeah, and I mean, there's an opportunity to bid even that service out, because again, that'll be a long-term service. I mean, that'll be.
Ongoing, yeah.
Yeah, 3-4 year service.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, I think that's smart, because I mean, we're not in the business of building jails, so to have an expert come in and guide us through that process, so we don't forget something that should be a component of it. Like you said, there's probably, for everything you think about, there's probably 10 things you don't think about, and, that person might whip it right out and go through a list and.
Yes, because they've done it before.
But if this company is willing to come in and give us some guidance up front without cost,
At no cost. I
at
love
no
that.
cost, I have no problem with that.
Free is a wonderful thing.
I mean, that's just like an initial consultation, I guess.
Got the next step there. Already on board.
Yeah, I mean, now, while that's going on, I know we've got to figure out funding, which is a huge component. I mean, nothing can stop, but we've addressed the needs. I mean, I feel like we're on the same page that, we definitely need a facility in the next few years. Should that stop us from not making any progress on land acquisition and looking at a little bit of design work? And if we have a property that has enough size to have all that stuff on it.
Well, we're gonna need to do it whether or not it's funded through SPOSS or not.
Right. Yeah. Either way, it's got to happen. We've got to figure out how to pay for it. And that's a big part of the equation, but I don't want to lose traction on acquiring land if we've got, potential site.
Yeah, I think the acquisition of land, we can go ahead and do that. I mean, it's more so just a matter of kind of procedurally just, working through this process of, okay, I think if everybody can come to an agreement, considering SPOS 9 as a potential funding method, not the full swing, but a portion of it, we can continue this meeting group here and just, continue talking about that location and how that process will work as far as acquiring that location.
Yeah, and I agree with you as far as the acquisition of the land.
Yeah.
Would probably be an issue that they would have to know where it is in order to answer some questions.
Yeah.
And a lot of times those companies,
Things like that.
yeah, those companies, they'll even come in and they'll do not only will they do a needs assessment for you, but they will also do a site survey selection, potential sites in a general area that you're looking at.
In my conversations with Sheriff Proctor in the past, he would like to have a large enough area that you could have your inmates growing their own food. Have a problem with that either. But then you got different, like you say, different levels of inmates. You're not gonna want some of them out there with a hose.
No,
And
no.
so that would be, your misdemeanors and stuff like that.
And of course, we'd have to check with the state regulations at that time as to whether that meets specifications as to what they're allowed to eat and whether it's been inspected, things like that.
Sure. Yeah.
There was a time where roadkill, as long as it's properly prepared and cooked, was all right, but that dog doesn't hunt it. No, 20 years ago, you hit a deer. Why let it go to waste? But
Yeah.
you can't do that anymore.
Do we want to set a time for our next meeting or?
Guys, tell me what's good for you.
I think it'd be good for us to kind of set some, homework assignments too,
Yeah,
as far as
yeah.
what's gonna come back to the next meeting. I'd hate for us just to set a date and then not really have a plan.
Right, yeah.
for it.
Yeah, if we could set some action items or goals or something like that we can kind of work on. And I don't know, that could be land acquisition homework and trying to get something, narrowed down that way, or it could be reaching out to one of these, PM companies.
So we can do it simultaneously,
Yeah,
you can look for different spots as far as locations and, come back with, a couple of different designs and go from there.
Yeah, I think, if we can come back with a few different design, examples that you may have or that you've already looked at, and, probably a few companies that we can look at, maybe get a proposal from some of them, and then come back and let this group look at that. I would probably recommend for the location purposes, if you're not wanting to disclose the actual potential locations of sites that you're looking at, that you may already know of, potentially having a subgroup kind of study that a little further. And then eventually, whenever we're ready to pull the trigger on that actual location, bring that before everybody here.
At the risk of volunteering or tolding somebody to be involved, I think if it's going to be in the Woodbine area, Woodbine City Hall to be involved in that.
Right.
Obviously, their maintenance or their facilities is going to be involved, so we can get all these folks involved. And if a piece of property is identified, to have somebody who deals with property and construction for initial examination to see if it actually is viable, I'd like to get Mr. Reddick involved there. As far as funding is concerned, find out what options we have as to where we can get funding. Until we decide. And obviously, I'll get this one company that would give us a free consultation. Somebody else wants to pick that up and find out if there's anybody else, maybe a little competition would be good.
Sean, would that service have to be bidded out? Professional services?
Yeah, at some point, I mean, just the initial consultation
Right.
wouldn't hurt, but they couldn't be involved any further from that. We would have to bid the remainder of that process out.
Okay.
Because there would be a conflict of interest, them knowing way too much information moving.
Well, I know is there a threshold amount after we, engage in the contract, up to a certain amount? There's gotta be-
Because of the scope and size of this project, I would highly recommend bidding it out just because of the, I mean, you're well into the six figures.
Yep.
Just in the management
Design.
aspect and design of this, potentially seven.
So when are you going to get together again? Do we want to try and have it at the same time every month or every 2 months or however you want to look at it so that people can calendar out? Or you just want to make it,
I think a monthly meeting right now would be good.
Yep.
I mean, I'd hate to over meet, but I think once a month right now would be,
That would give us time to go do those two things like you're talking about, look at a little bit of land and, talk to some of these companies to see what they could say on an initial consultation.
And I think one thing that needs to be considered, I don't know what the market looks like in Woodbine proper, but you can consider that also if it is in Woodbine's jurisdictional boundaries, you're also taking some property off the tax digest, which is another hit to their revenue stream. So maybe somewhere just outside of the city boundaries would be appropriate.
as long as it's close enough, yes. That could be a viable option.
Samantha, do you know if y'all, I mean, kind of what's y'all's threshold as far as ability to expand outwards from the city limits with your water and sewer as it
It-
stands now? I mean, can
That's
you
the
expand?
conversation I've already had. It is possible.
Okay.
We can do it.
Okay.
Any idea like how far? I know it probably depends on location, whether it's southeast or west, but
Anything at that location in Woodland. So I would say what, at least probably up to maybe a mile, up to a mile.
up to a mile.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a very good point, and I think, you know, looking at the, you know, potential revenue for, you know, water and sewer consumption, hopefully make up for some of the property taxes being off the digest.
If it's outside the city limits, it'll be off of
Yeah,
ours,
the way ours do, yeah.
which no matter where it's
Right.
built, it'll be off of ours, so.
Okay,
And in saying that, I mean, we would have to sit down and have a concept, but I'm not sure how far out past that, but I'm sure that there may be some option for us if it had to be pushed a little further, that we could certainly accommodate that.
So we'll send out we'll get, who, you want to send out a calendar invite to everybody for the next meeting, or?
Yes, sir. What day were we looking at?
so 4 weeks.
I'm
from now?
retired, so any day.
Don't rub it in.
February 9th, or you want to keep it on a Thursday, or?
Yeah, Mondays are terrible for
Yep.
most everybody, because you gotta put out on the fires.
At 10 o'clock on the night.
I won't be able to be here, but I can have somebody else sit in for that.
Second, the 16th?
I'm good on the 16th.
16th? Sound good to me?
Same time, 10 a.m.
Works for me.
Anything else for this meeting? I appreciate everybody showing up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.